Welcome back to True Crime Documentary YouTube channel. The brutal murder of 19-year-old Jason Miller was a nightmare that shattered the peace of his quiet, suburban neighborhood. What began as a tragedy, a life cut short in a tragic accident, quickly unraveled into a sinister tale of forbidden love, betrayal, and an obsession that spiraled out of control. At the center of this story lies a shocking relationship, the affair between Jason and his neighbor, Linda Hargrove, a 51-year-old housewife and mother. It's hard to pinpoint where it all began. Perhaps it was inevitable, sparked by Linda's own restlessness and unfulfilled desires, but the story would end in horror, with consequences neither could have foreseen. It all started on a warm summer evening. Linda stood in her kitchen, hands lost in the rhythm of washing dishes, while her husband, Richard, sat in the living room, his eyes glued to the evening news. Richard and Linda's marriage had once been filled with laughter, but over the years, they had drifted into a comfortable yet dull routine. What they had built together, 2 children, a lovely home, shared memories, was all still there, but the excitement was gone. The passion had faded, leaving Linda feeling almost invisible in her own life. As she went about her daily tasks, her thoughts would often drift, and recently they had begun to drift to a new place, toward Jason, the young man next door. She had watched him grow up from a boy playing in the yard to a young man, tall, athletic, with a confidence that was both boyish and charming. Linda couldn't ignore the way her heart seemed to race when she saw him. She felt ashamed of it, but the thrill was undeniable. Their encounters started innocently enough. Jason would occasionally help Linda carry groceries or lend a hand with yard work. Each time he would flash her an easy, friendly smile, always polite, always helpful. But Linda began to feel the subtle change within herself, the quickened pulse, the warmth in her cheeks as they chatted. Soon she found herself looking forward to these moments, hoping to catch a glimpse of him or hear his voice. One evening, as she was taking out the trash, she saw Jason sitting on his front porch, a book in his hands. For a moment she hesitated, but their eyes met, and it was as if something invisible pulled her toward him. "What are you reading?" she asked, trying to sound casual as she approached. Jason looked up, smiling warmly. "Just some school reading," he replied, holding up the book. "Do you like to read?" Linda gave a small shrug. "I used to, but life gets busy, you know?" Jason tilted his head, his gaze thoughtful. "Maybe you should make time for it. It might be a nice escape." His words lingered in the air between them, carrying an unspoken meaning that both of them understood. That night, as Linda lay awake, her thoughts kept circling back to Jason. His youthful charm and that easy smile had left an impression she couldn't shake. It had been years since she'd felt that kind of excitement. Days turned into weeks, and their interactions grew longer, filled with lingering looks and subtle touches. Jason began stopping by more often. Sometimes he needed help with school assignments. Other times, he just wanted to talk. Linda knew it was wrong. She was a married woman, and he was just a young man. But the pull between them was stronger than her sense of right and wrong. The thrill, the danger, made her feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. One afternoon, when Richard was away on a business trip, Jason knocked on Linda's door. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it and found him standing there, his expression hesitant. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. She hesitated, but then, as if guided by an unseen force, she stepped aside. They sat together in the living room, their conversation filled with a tension that had been building for weeks. Jason looked at her, his gaze intense, as he finally confessed, "I can't stop thinking about you." Linda felt her breath catch. She knew she should stop him, that she should say it was wrong. But instead, she leaned closer, their feelings crashing together as they shared a kiss that quickly grew into something more. That afternoon changed everything. What had been a forbidden fantasy became a dangerous reality as their affair grew more passionate and intense. But with that intensity came a darkness Linda hadn't anticipated. At first, Jason was charming and attentive, always eager to see her. But soon, he became possessive, jealous if she couldn't see him, or if she mentioned her husband. He began to text her constantly, demanding to know where she was and who she was with. Linda brushed it off as youthful insecurity, but the warning signs were there. The sweetness between them was becoming shadowed by an obsessive darkness. Despite her unease, Linda found herself unable to let go. She was addicted to the excitement, the sense of danger that came with their stolen moments. She believed she could control it, that she could keep things from getting out of hand. But deep down, she knew that control was slipping away. One night, after a heated argument with Richard over something trivial, Linda found herself at the lake, the secluded spot where she often met Jason. The night was dark, the moon casting a faint glow over the still water. She waited there, her mind a storm of conflicting emotions, until she heard the sound of Jason's bike skidding to a stop beside her. As he approached, she could sense a change in him, a darkness that hadn't been there before. "Why are you still with him?" Jason demanded, his voice filled with frustration. "Why go back to a man who doesn't appreciate you?" Linda took a step back, her heart pounding. "Jason, it's not that simple. There are things you don't understand." But he wouldn't listen. "If you loved me, you'd leave him," he hissed, his eyes flashing with anger. "It's him or me, Linda." For the first time, Linda felt real fear. She tried to reason with him, to calm him down, but his jealousy and possessiveness had reached a fever pitch. As she tried to place a comforting hand on his arm, he jerked away, his gaze cold and unyielding. "I'm serious," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You're mine. You belong to me, not him." The possessiveness in his voice terrified her, but she felt trapped, pulled deeper into a situation that was spiraling out of control. Jason's behavior grew more unpredictable. He began showing up at her house unannounced, lurking outside, watching her. He would call her at all hours, demanding to know where she was and who she was with. The boy she had once found so charming had transformed into something dangerous, a force that she couldn't escape. Then one night, Linda was home alone. Richard was away on a business trip, and her son was staying with a friend. She tried to relax, but the memories of Jason's obsessive behavior haunted her. Suddenly, she heard a noise outside. Her heart skipped a beat as she looked out the window. There, in the faint glow of the porch light, stood Jason, his eyes fixed on her, his expression unreadable. She opened the door, her hands trembling. "Jason, what are you doing here?" she demanded. He took a step closer, his voice calm but filled with an intensity that sent chills down her spine. "I had to see you," he said. "I've been thinking, and I know what I'll have to do." Linda felt panic rising within her. She tried to reason with him, telling him to leave, but he just stared at her, unmoving. "I'm going to make it right," he murmured. "I'm going to get rid of him so we can be together." The horror of his words hit her like a tidal wave. Jason was planning to kill her husband. Desperate, Linda agreed to meet him the next day at the lake, hoping to find a way to calm him down and stop this madness. When she arrived, Jason was already there, waiting for her with a disturbing calmness. "Jason, please, this isn't the answer," she begged, trying to hold back her fear, but he wouldn't be swayed. "I love you, Linda," he whispered, his voice filled with an eerie calm. "And I'm doing this for us. Don't you see? It's the only way." Linda realized that reasoning with him was futile. As he spoke, she reached into her pocket, fingers closing around the knife she had hidden there, but Jason sensed her fear. He grabbed her wrist, twisting it until the knife fell from her grasp. In a panic, Linda struck back, desperate to break free. They struggled, and in a moment of desperation, she picked up a rock from the ground and struck him with all her strength. Jason collapsed, his body going limp, and Linda stood there, breathless, staring at what she had done. Hours later, Linda dragged Jason's body to the lake, pushing it into the water. She watched as it sank, praying that her nightmare had finally ended. Days turned into weeks, and eventually, Jason's body washed ashore. The authorities ruled it an accidental drowning, but Linda's life was never the same. She was haunted by visions of Jason, his voice echoing in her mind, a constant reminder of the horror she had lived through. One night, unable to bear the guilt any longer, Linda returned to the lake. She walked into the water, letting it pull her down into the depths, where Jason had been lost. The next morning, Linda's empty house was all that remained. Her car was gone, and her side of the bed was cold. Days later, her body was found in the lake, and the neighborhood was left reeling with the tragedy. And so, the story of Linda Hargrove and Jason Miller came to a tragic end. The truth remained hidden beneath the surface, but for those who knew, the memory of forbidden love and betrayal would linger forever. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Be sure to check out our other videos for more captivating stories. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.